To find out, Matt removed the burnt fuse entirely and supplied 12 volts directly to the circuit. Instantly, the gearbox pressure pump came to life. For the first time since buying the Veyron, they could hear it running. That was the breakthrough they needed. Next, Matt installed the correct 20-amp fuse. The pump activated, built pressure exactly as designed, then automatically shut off once the system reached the proper level. Everything behaved perfectly. There was only one test left. Would the transmission finally shift into gear? Matt climbed into the driver's seat and selected reverse. It worked immediately, then neutral, then drive. Every gear engaged exactly as it should. To make absolutely sure, the team lifted the Veyron onto a ramp and tested the drivetrain under load. All four wheels spun without hesitation. The gearbox everyone believed needed replacing was fully operational. The official 300,000-pound repair had turned into a 5-pound electrical fix. The previous owner had abandoned a perfectly reparable Bugatti because of a diagnosis that never uncovered the real problem. Naturally, people began asking the obvious question: how could this happen in the first place? The answer lies in Bugatti's repair policy. When Veyrons and Chirons arrive with gearbox problems, the official service network generally replaces the entire sealed transmission instead of repairing individual components. There are understandable reasons for that. These gearboxes are incredibly complex, and opening one without the right expertise could create even bigger problems. Replacing the complete unit guarantees factory standards, but it also guarantees an enormous bill. If the real issue is something as simple as a fuse, relay, or electrical connection, replacing the whole gearbox becomes completely unnecessary. That raises an uncomfortable question. Are the simplest checks sometimes being overlooked? Matt's discovery has fueled a huge debate among car enthusiasts. If this Veyron only needed a 5-pound fuse, how many other exotic cars have been declared beyond repair because nobody investigated the basics? It's impossible to know. But this wasn't the first time Matt had challenged Bugatti's repair approach. Earlier, he bought a heavily damaged Bugatti Chiron that had already been written off by insurance. Once again, he ignored assumptions, worked methodically through every problem, brought in specialists when needed, sourced difficult parts, and eventually returned the car to the road. That success attracted millions of viewers and put Bugatti under an uncomfortable spotlight. But would history repeat itself? It did. The Veyron became the second high-profile Bugatti that Matt restored after many believed it was effectively finished. Online discussions exploded. Many viewers pointed out previous comments suggesting that only official Bugatti technicians should work on these cars because of their incredible complexity. Yet here was an independent mechanic fixing one with a replacement fuse bought from an ordinary shop. The contrast between the official repair estimate and the actual solution became impossible to ignore. For many people, this wasn't just about one Veyron. It became a wider conversation about repair policies, transparency, and whether replacing complete assemblies is always the best answer. Of course, nobody outside Bugatti can say whether this situation is common or simply an unusual case. There's no evidence showing how many cars, if any, may have experienced similar issues. But this Veyron, combined with Matt's earlier Chiron restoration, has certainly encouraged owners to ask more questions before accepting massive repair bills. Sometimes complicated machines really do require expensive solutions. Other times, the answer might be hiding behind something as ordinary as a fuse. That's exactly why this story has captured so much attention. It reminds us that careful diagnosis can be just as valuable as expensive parts, and that the simplest explanation should never be ignored. After all, if a 5-pound fuse could save one Bugatti from a 300,000-pound repair bill, what other unbelievable stories might still be waiting to be discovered? A Bugatti Veyron sat abandoned in a garage with what looked like an impossible problem. The official repair bill came to an eye-watering 300,000 pounds. The owner simply walked away because paying that much made no sense. The car was eventually repossessed and sold for a fraction of its value. Then YouTuber and mechanic Mat Armstrong bought it, grabbed a toolbox, spent a few hours investigating, and fixed the entire problem with a fuse that cost just 5 pounds. Yes, 5 pounds. Even more surprising, this wasn't the first time he had exposed a repair that many thought only Bugatti could handle. So, how did a repair that supposedly required a brand new gearbox end up needing little more than pocket change? To understand why this story has exploded across the internet, you first need to understand the Bugatti Veyron itself. When it arrived in 2005, it completely changed the supercar world. It packed a massive 16-cylinder engine for turbochargers and more than 1,000 horsepower. At the time, nothing else on the road could match it. Each car reportedly cost Bugatti over £5 million to build, yet they sold for around £1 million, meaning the company lost money on every example. It's one of the most complicated production cars ever made, and because of that, owners expect repairs to be incredibly expensive. But was this repair really as complicated as everyone believed? The official diagnosis centered on the Veyron's dual-clutch gearbox. This transmission handles enormous amounts of power and sends it to all four wheels. According to Bugatti's service policy, technicians don't repair individual gearbox components. If there's a serious issue, they replace the entire sealed unit. The price? Around £300,000. That was exactly what the previous owner was told. Faced with a repair bill almost equal to the car's value, they gave up. The Veyron sat unused because everyone accepted that the official diagnosis had to be correct. But what if nobody had checked the most basic things first? That's where Mat Armstrong came in. His YouTube channel has become famous for buying broken supercars that dealers and insurance companies have written off. He's rebuilt Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Porsches, and many other exotic cars by refusing to assume the worst. Instead of jumping straight to replacing expensive parts, he starts with the basics. When he examined the Veyron, the engine started without any trouble, but the gearbox refused to engage. Whether he selected drive or reverse, nothing happened. The car remained stuck in park. Most people would have accepted Bugatti's diagnosis right there. Mat decided to keep digging, and what he found next left viewers stunned. Rather than guessing, Mat brought in specialist Ricky from RE Performance. Using advanced diagnostic equipment, Ricky connected to the Veyron's computer systems remotely. Modern cars constantly monitor their own components through sensors, sending information to a central computer that records what every system is doing. Ricky began activating different functions one by one. The secondary air pump refused to respond. Then, he tested the gearbox pressure pump. Oddly, the computer reported that everything was working perfectly. But standing beside the car, Mat couldn't hear the pump running at all. The system believed it was functioning, while reality told a very different story. So what could make a computer think everything was fine when nothing actually worked? Problems like this usually point to something surprisingly simple. Either the sensors are giving false information or power isn't reaching the component at all. The computer sends a command, records it as successful, but somewhere between the signal and the actual part, electricity stops flowing. One of the most common reasons for that is a blown fuse. A fuse is a tiny safety device designed to protect expensive electrical systems. If too much current passes through it, the small wire inside melts, breaking the circuit before major damage can occur. Every vehicle has dozens of them, and replacing one usually takes less than a minute. If that's true, why hadn't anyone checked them before recommending a £300,000 gearbox? Mat wasn't willing to accept the official explanation without proving it for himself. While Ricky continued monitoring the diagnostics, Mat opened the fuse box and began checking every single fuse manually. There was no shortcut, no special map showing exactly which one controlled the gearbox. He simply inspected them one at a time. Most were perfectly fine. Then he found one that was completely burnt out. It was melted beyond recognition. But that wasn't even the biggest surprise. The damaged part was a 40 amp mini fuse, a rating that isn't normally used for that style of fuse. Someone had deliberately installed a non-standard replacement. Why would anyone do something like that? The answer was both simple and worrying. If a fuse keeps blowing, it usually means the circuit is drawing too much electrical current. Instead of finding the real cause, someone had apparently installed larger and larger fuses in hopes the problem would disappear. First a smaller fuse, then 30 amps, finally 40 amps. Each time, they increased the protection limit instead of fixing the underlying fault. That's dangerous because oversized fuses stop protecting the wiring. Instead of the fuse failing first, the electrical system itself can overheat, damaging expensive components or even causing a fire. Eventually, even the oversized fuse failed, leaving the gearbox pump with no power at all. But was the gearbox actually broken?